Hello, welcome to the first in what we hope will be a series of interviews that we're calling informally Spotlight on the Candidates. We'll be interviewing candidates, in my case, with those who are running for office in Berkeley Heights, which is where I live. My name is Bill Bennett. I'll be your host today, and we're pleased to have in the studio with us John Bonacci. John is familiar to those who have been following Berkeley Heights politics for a little while, but we know that there are some of you who are watching who are not familiar with the local politics. You may have just moved into town, or you may have just decided to pay more attention. So this next 30 minutes is for you to get to know John, his points of view, a little bit about him as a person, his views of what the important issues are for those of us who live in Berkeley Heights, and his positions on those issues, and ultimately why John would like you to consider voting for him. John is running as an independent for mayor of Berkeley Heights. John, welcome.
Thank you, Bill.
Or perhaps I should say welcome back.
Yes, that's
John
right.
and I have sat, not exactly in these seats, but on this set in this studio before when John and Jerry Nelson were running for town council in Berkeley Heights just not that long ago.
That's right, 3 years ago.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like 3 years can have passed, does it?
And 2 years also.
Yeah.
It was...
So let's get a little bit of context for the voters. There's some who may either only know you slightly or not even know you at all. And let me ask you to start, John, by just telling us a little bit about yourself, or just a few minutes of biographical sketch of John Bonacci, if you would.
Well, thank you, Bill, very much. I'm pleased to be here again, and I'm without Jerry this time because it's a solo position, but we did it twice together with you, and once I did it alone when he couldn't make it. So you had us before we ran, after we ran, and won, and after 1 year. So some people may know something about me, but we have constantly influx of people into Berkeley Heights. So I'm glad to say a little bit. On the personal, very personal side, my wife Annette and I have been in Berkeley Heights for 33 years, and I commuted here working for Engelhardt Industries in Mountain Avenue for about 2.5 years or so before that. So we've been around. We have 2 daughters and their husbands, and they live within 20 minutes. One is in Berkeley Heights. She's my campaign manager and a lawyer. The other one's in Westfield with the 2 grandchildren. And you know, we are family. It's a primary 8 here because the basic family is in New York and Florida, and I'm the son of an immigrant who's long since passed on. But we spend weekends together. We do about 2 vacations a year. We've been to Italy, France, and recently Hawaii. So it's very family-oriented, our primary 8, and much for the other time with Utica, New York relatives and Florida ones when there's a death, a birth, a christening, etc. So, so much for the family. In the education area, I have more education than I need for this job, I'm sure. But I have a BS, MS from Clarkson College up in New York State. I have a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, a scientist and engineer. I have a PE license. I have a license to practice patent law as a patent agent. I've had numerous awards from the college and from the professional society, so my education is round out that way. In the work area, I had the pleasure of working for 2 of what was in their time and still are 5 best managed companies in the United States and international, DuPont and Mobil Oil, which is now ExxonMobil. And I also received training at the U.S. Air Force, although I'm not a veteran. I was a private employee, and worked for Engelhardt Industries here as a vice president and executive. And my work product is, you know, 101 global patents, publication of a chapter in an environmental magazine. For the last few years, although consumed with politics, I've been the president and past president of the American Society of Chemists and Chemical Engineers locally in New York. And I've had a leadership role in that organization and with the companies I worked for. I'm very pleased about my teaching experience. It's been as an adjunct at Rutgers and Stevens for 3 or 4 years each, and once an actual visiting professorship at Rutgers. and so at the college and the university level. So I think I know something about education, and I've been involved in adult education too for 8 or 9 years in a professional society, you know, picking the other professors, helping them schedule it, figure out what they're going to say, think of what's timely. In the civic area, I belong to the Knights of Columbus and do some charity work. I belong to the Old Guard of Summit, a men's club of professionals from largely a lot of Bell Labs people and great speakers and activities. And I've been a band parent at the high school for 11 years, since my daughter's now out of there. And I do a variety of things of that nature. So that's sort of all the personal stuff. I have a website, www.bonacciformayor.com, and it's got some of this stuff about me professionally, locally, and ad nauseum. Maybe this is too much even now, well, but you know, I may put something perspective.
I think so, John, and we were talking about this before we came on camera, and that is that voters, they really like to understand who it is that they're voting for as a person, as well as understanding their perspective on the issues. So I think it's always helpful for people. For some people, the work experience will be the thing they'll tune into. For other people, it might be the education. Who's to say? But thank you for answering those questions. So let's move into your public life, particularly as it relates to Berkeley Heights. I'm sure the voters would be interested, as I am, in what drew you into politics and public life in Berkeley Heights in the first place, when that happened, and what brought you in.
Yeah, there could be some fun aspects to that. Well, the past 4 years, of course, I've been a councilman, and I was elected twice, 4 years ago for a 1-year term, and 3 years ago as an independent candidate for a 3-year term. So that's preoccupied the 4 years. But like everybody else, 7 years ago, I was busy working, raising my family, worrying about money and stuff. And, well, the only thing I did prior to that was I was a board worker at the polls. And I think I did a great job of it, helped people from both parties, and they always were pleased with their confusion of voting. And then something happened where, you know, when you write in names, you don't like somebody or they write in names. Well, occasionally I didn't want to vote for either of the candidates, and so instead of writing in Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse, I would write in John Bonacci. At least I spelled it right. Well, you know, these real politicians, of which I wasn't one, they see that stuff. And one day, 7 years ago, somebody got sick, and the local chair called me, at that time it was a party, and asked me to run. And I ran, take the place of a sick person to help. And I lost, and then somebody heard about my education, and they asked me to run for the school board, and I tried that and lost. And I took some time off and didn't do anything. And a few people remembered me, and believe it or not, they wrote in my name 4 years ago in the nominating process. So they wrote it in, and I made it on the ballot right when the new government was changing in Berkeley Heights to a new form of government.
Now, were you on a party line or an independent line?
That first time I was on a party line as a Democrat. So it didn't take, not many Democrats in Berkeley Heights. However, I won. I was the first one in about 12 years to win. But I have problems with the parties and all, and when my year was about to be up, I ended up running, decided to run as an independent. I found my partner, or somebody found him for me, Jerry Nelson, who I'd only known briefly, and we took on both parties, and we won. So I kind of had my feet wet for a year, was a little irritated with what I saw going on, and decided to go for a full term, 3 years, and that's how I did it. And that's how my political career started. And another amusing thing is, the time I ran for the school board, I'd already lost once, and as the town council. And a woman met me at the post office where we normally hang out in Berkeley Heights on Saturday mornings, say hello to people. And she said, you know, you're doing this wrong, John. Dr. Bonacci, she said, you're doing this wrong. You're supposed to first do some civic work, which I did do. And you're then supposed to go for the school board, and then you go for the town and whatever. I said, you know, ma'am, I don't want to say my age though, but I was retired. And I said, I have no goals to go a lot higher. So I don't have to do it in that order. It was kind of comical the way it happened. But anyway, that's how I was involved, and I'm in it hook, line, and sinker as a scientist and engineer, and I don't like the word politics or politician. I think of myself as a public servant and providing public service.
So that's great. Fun to hear how that happens. A lot of people wonder, how in the world do people get into politics? In your case, there's a little frustration with some of the existing candidates, writing your name in, getting noticed, and then people coming to ask you. So here we are, 2010, the mayoral election campaign is underway, or just about to get underway, and you're running for mayor. So tell me a little bit, and tell the voters a little bit about how you decided to run for mayor.
Yeah, well, that's interesting also. I had my eye on it. I've been dissatisfied with the new form of government, which is now executive and legislative, as opposed to the old form, which was a committee, which was both executive and legislative. But Jerry Nelson and I, whom we've mentioned now, we both decided we weren't going to run for council again. I did 4 years, he did 3. And the last time we interviewed, I remember he out-talked me that time, believe it or not, but I ended the interview by saying, I thought we should get newer, younger faces, fresher faces, and start to bring more people. And I wanted them to be independent, because I have some frustration with the way the local parties are operating, even though I'm a believer in the two-party system in America and locally. So I was going to help some people run off slate in the Republican primary, which are mostly Republican people in Berkeley Heights. And somehow that fell through, but I said, okay, I'll back up in case something happens. And sure enough, something happened. So I went and got my couple hundred signatures and decided I would be mayor. I must have wanted to do it anyway. And it'll come clear as I say some other things. But that's how I got into it.
Yeah, so as it stands, and I have to be careful, we're taping on September 16th. So by the time this goes on the air in early October, it may well have changed, but just recently, one of the mayoral candidates, Ray Sullivan, dropped out. As of this moment, it's just you and Joe Bruno from the Republican Party. We don't know if the Democrats are going to run a replacement candidate for Mr. Sullivan or not. So for the background of the voters who are listening to this discussion, this is a moment in time when there may only be 2 candidates, and by the time we get back on the air, there could be a third one who's unknown to us right now. So we understand why you're running for mayor. Maybe we should talk a little bit about your campaign and where you are in the campaign and who's involved with the campaign. Anything you'd like to tell the voters about your campaign? Well,
the campaign is off to, in fact, it's interesting now that there's only 2, because that's a little of the motivation. 4 years ago, a man ran for mayor in the first form of government here in Berkeley Heights, and he was unopposed. And somebody ran as, what do you call it, write-in, but which is very difficult to do. So I'm sort of glad that I did this independent thing, so that people will have a choice. And I know Mr. Bruno. We've been out to dinner together. We've sang karaoke at one of the League of Municipality meetings, and he's been involved a year longer than I have. But my campaign then, once I got into it, was off to a great start. We got a few days ahead of the normal Labor Day unofficial start. A couple of days ahead, because I have such a nice group of active supporters, led by my daughter as the campaign manager.